Greetings, chess fans. It's been yet another exciting day here in Biel since we are following the action of the 58th International Biel Chess Festival, whose main event is the GMT Masters and Challengers Triathlon. The triathlon is a combination of three tournaments: classical, rapid, and blitz. And today was the first game of the final stage. Of both tournaments, two players already have withdrawn because they didn't qualify for the final stage. We have four more players in both tournaments. And I have selected one of the most exciting games of the round that featured Rinat Jumabayev against Aram Hakobian. So the game opened up with e4, c5, and knight f3. Black played e6 and knight c3. This is a pretty interesting way to play, so white is delaying the move d4. The reasons could be that white was also considering to play g3, bishop g2, should black, for example, play something like h6. So black decided to play knight c6 instead, and now follow the move h3. So h3 is a pretty difficult move to explain, so white again is toying with all kinds of setups, but at least one of the things that's immediately visible, if black plays knight f6, white plays e5, challenges the knight, and the knight doesn't have the g4 square. Maybe also in some other lines, if black does something else, white can switch to d4 and perhaps play some open Sicilian with g4. Black played bishop e7, a rather mysterious move. Now white switched to the Sicilian Rossolimo, which is one of the typical ideas, except of h3 and bishop e7 included. And also with the bishop in e7, black doesn't have the access to a very common knight g to e7, so bishop b5 does make sense. Black played queen b6. After the show castle, knight e4 was played, and this is also a very common idea in the Sicilian Rossolimo. If you ever take on d4, c takes on d4, the knight has to move. And as you can see here, it's simply impossible because the bishop on b5 would be left defenseless. So white played a4. The idea typically is to play a5, a6, secure the bishop on b5. So a6 was played, and bishop d3. Now, not a very common idea in the Sicilian Rossolimo, but this is taken directly from another variation against the Najdorf anti-Moscow, anti-Najdorf variation, with the idea that you want to play knight x on d4. Let me just put it on the board. Knight x on d4, knight e2, let's say black plays knight f6, c3 takes, another b takes or d takes, and white enjoys some pressure. So bishop on d3 feels weird, but it actually works. Black played knight c6 to keep the bishop on c1 imprisoned, followed by rook e1, d6, and knight e2. So after the opening, you could say that white hasn't accomplished anything real, but white has at least clear ideas. White wants to play c3, bishop c2, and d4. And this is where black made a pretty serious mistake. Black played knight b4, feeling that he has the right to be ambitious. According to an engine, engine supported the claim, but he should have continued something else, for example, like h5, with the idea to play g5, g4. And now if white will play something like c3, black can very quickly take over the game because he's the one who starts to attack first. A very, very inspired idea, but the Armenian Grandmaster did not pick it up. Instead, he played knight b4, expecting that after bishop c4, he has the time to play d5. And after the capture, bishop e3, the whole idea of the entire variation was to play c4 and force the bishop on a2. Probably Hakobian had expected that after a5 there's an amazing shot, c takes on b3, sacrificing the queen. The point is, if white accepts the queen, a takes on b6, b takes on c2, black wins back the queen and keeps the material interest. But as it happened, he simply had missed from afar that white can play c3 and that this position is very much in favor for white. Black played queen d6, c takes on b4 followed. Now it's very dangerous for black to accept the pawn because he's underdeveloped. The bishop on e7 remains stuck, so white could play something like knight e4 or knight c3, double the heavy pieces at the e file, so black would have some problems to complete development. So that's why black decided to play knight f6 first. d3 was played, a very nice move to control the e4 and c4 squares. And here it was a pretty difficult to explain mistake by the Armenian Grandmaster. He did not play queen takes on b4. I suppose he saw some ghosts. Maybe, for example, Arthur knight e4, should castle, bishop f4. He felt that the queen on b4 is completely disconnected from the game. Or another idea we had during the online commentary, maybe knight c3, should castle, and knight a4, threatening knight b6 and bishop f4. But in all the lines, black is holding. Either way, he made a mistake. He made a short castle, and after bishop d2, white just kept the pawn on b4 and grabbed the pawn on b3 for free. Couple of moves later, bishop d7, knight e4, rook e8, queen b3, white has secured a large advantage. So here, bishop f8 was played, b5, Jumabayev was seeking ways to get rid of the double pawns, h6, rook takes on e8, rook takes on e8, and here came rook e1, the mistake. So what Jumabayev had thought, that he feels pretty safe to trade the rooks, he has an extra pawn at the queen side, and he's going to figure things out. And here came the sensational move, knight e4, a tactical resource that the Kazakhstani Grandmaster had missed. So the point is, white has to accept the knight, otherwise black gets very active at the queen side, and also knight takes on d2 is a threat. And after d takes on e4, d takes on e4, the position suddenly opens up. The knight on f3 cannot leave because the knight on d4 for white is under attack, and black essentially equalizes the game. So here Jumabayev decided to play b takes on a6 and play queen b6, a double exclam move, but to be honest, white already has an extra piece, so all of this is perfectly reasonable. E takes on f3 was played, the rooks were traded, and queen takes on d6. And he said maybe it was a better idea to include knight takes on f3 first, to keep the queens on the board, but maybe Jumabayev already had decided that there's not much really to fight for. So he traded the queens, played knight f3, and a couple of moves later, the position simplified, bishop c3 was played, black took on d4, and the position was repeated for a draw. So a rather uneventful finish, but a very exciting game with fascinating lines. So after the first round of the final stage, we can check how the current standings look like before two more final rounds will be played. In the Masters, nothing has changed. All the players, their games finished in a draw. Salek Salem and Fedoseev share the lead with 24.5 points. Arvind is still pretty close, considering that every victory in the classical tournament is awarded with 4 points and draw is 1.5. For Voldar Merzen, it's going to be difficult to reach the top 3, but he's definitely going to give it a try. In the meantime, in the challengers, Nicholas Theodorov scored a very important theoretical victory over David Navarra, outlasting the experienced Czech Grandmaster in a highly complicated rook endgame. This allowed him to increase the lead over the closest follower, Aram Jacobian, to full 5 points, making a very strong claim to win the challengers tournament. In the meantime, Rinat Jumabayev remains in a solid third place, and David Navarra hopes to fight at least for a place on the pedestal. That's it. That's the action for today, dear viewers, and we are going to come back with more action tomorrow, as usual, 2 p.m. Central European Summer Time. So tune in and watch it live.